I usually find graphic hacks of other games to be a bit off-putting. It's probably a fantastic way to get started in the realm of homebrew and hobby programming, as you begin to tweak and learn other people's code and graphics, but something about them always felt a little, I don't know, maybe lacking in originality? Like, no matter what you do or how you change things, the original will always be in the back of my mind, and I'll always be comparing the tweaks and alterations you've made to that original, for better or for worse. So Haunted Adventure Trilogy is a game cartridge that I wouldn't normally have purchased, but it was graciously donated by channel Patreon and all-around cool person, Fens the Spook. By the way, Fens has a really cool profile picture. It reminds me of like a Crypt Keeper for some reason, and because of that, I dub Fens the Spook Crypt Keeper of the Atari Network. Go forth and lay waste to the Atariverse with tales of horror and puns aplenty. Alright, anyway, let's find out if Haunted Adventure Trilogy has changed my mind on the idea of graphical hacks, or if I feel more justified than ever in my original opinion. Haunted House Trilogy has been available on atariage since 2009, and is credited to Anthony Wong. But it seems he had a fair bit of help and inspiration, as the manual has a lengthy thanks and credits section. Speaking of the manual, this thing is a monster. It just might be the largest manual I've ever held for an Atari 2600 homebrew, and for good reason. There's 3 games included on this one cartridge, which is a great value. First you have Haunted Adventure, Boo, which is listed as being a mod of the original Haunted Adventure. I assume the original was a simple mashup of Adventure and Haunted House, which seems appropriate, honestly. The 2 games always felt related in some sort of way to me. The second game on the cartridge is the sequel to the first, and it's called Haunted Adventure 2, Redemption. A bit cliche, but it's right to the point. It's yet another Adventure and Haunted House mashup. And finally, you get Haunted Adventure 3, Witch's Flight, which feels very Halloween 3 of the trilogy. Not only does it seem to veer away from the standards set by the first 2, but it also uses the 2600 Superman game as a base, and not Adventure or Haunted House. Hopefully it doesn't go full Season of the Witch on us. So when you insert the cartridge, which does work on the 2600 Plus if you have all the firmware updates, you start on Haunted Adventure 1. Using the game select switch, you can cycle through the games. So games 1 through 3 are all Haunted Adventure 1, with Mode 1 being normal, Mode 2 being advanced, and Mode 3 being random. 4 through 6 are more of the same with Haunted Adventure 2, and Mode 7 is the only mode for Haunted Adventure 3. With that out of the way, I'll highlight my experience with each, and then give the whole package a breakdown and a rating at the end. So let's start at the beginning with Haunted Adventure 1, Boo. Haunted Adventure 1, Boo? Did he mean Boo Earns? Well, anyway. In Haunted Adventure 1, you play 23 years after the original Haunted House, and some hooligans have disturbed the final resting place of Old Man Graves. So you have to find the poor man's soul and lay it to rest in his crypt beneath the haunted house from the first game. I got this from the manual, of course, and I really recommend reading it, as I was confused at first. I thought the first item next to you was the sword from Adventure, but if you take the time to do a little research in the manual like I did, you'll realize this is a shovel, and it's meant for finding and revealing the old man's tomb. But first you need to locate his soul, and to do so, you'll have to venture around a maze, and using both the traditional adventure style and controls, along with the limited lighting mechanics of Haunted House. You have the bridge, keys, a hand that acts like the magnet, and a few other items to contend with along your journey. And overall, it's a bit more confusing than Adventure, and I think that's because it's harder to get your bearings, thanks to the relentless enemies. Starting out, you have to contend with the Ghost and the Grim Reaper, and there are ways to manipulate them a little, but honestly, they chase you until you're dead. Luckily, hitting the button respawns you, and you'll be doing a lot of that, at least if you're like me. I found the enemies tough, but especially when I had the soul in my possession. I could not return it to the crypt, even after try after try, and that's for multiple reasons. First, an even more aggressive ghost joins in chasing you. Second, they damage you like the enemies from Adventure, by trapping you in their jaws and their belly. And third, they like to chase you from below, which is the easiest way for them to get a kill on you, and usually happens when I'm trying to escape the maze with the soul. And it happens over and over again. It happens so much that I just gave up. I never did save the old man on any difficulty. This Adventure and Haunted House hack is cool. I wanted to like it, but the difficulty sucked the fun right out of it. Well, that and the god-awful sound. I know the 2600 doesn't have robust sound abilities to begin with, but the constant sounds of moving and running into things are just ear-grating. But it's okay. Maybe just the first game isn't my speed. There's 2 others to win me over. And next, we're going to be giving Haunted Adventure 2 a chance at redemption. And starting the sequel, I was glad to see that in Mode 4 at least, it resembled Haunted House a little more. At least for variety's sake. This time, the story says that Old Man Graves is calling us back to the house that started it all. And so off we go. Why do we always go? But anyway, this time you're locating the urn that you found in the first game, and it appears to be back together. But the issues from the first Haunted Adventure are still present, and maybe even worse here. There are more enemies, and they are relentless in tracking you down and killing you. They are just as fast as you are and have a tendency to cut you off and kill you because of it. They also spawn camp me too. The enemies are just ridiculous and suck all the fun right out of the game. I came close to returning the urn a few times, but ultimately, I gave up. It's more of the same, awful sound and frustration from the first game on the cartridge. Except for Game Mode 5. That one isn't more of the same. It's actually quite different, and each game mode for Haunted Adventure 2 is a little different than the others, which is actually really cool. You seem to awake on some sort of riverbed and travel through forests, mazes, and along waterfronts and oceans to find the key back into the haunted house, and then move from adventure to haunted house style gameplay. And the enemies, while still hard as hell, are at least mostly reserved to the house and dark maze areas, so you can explore without a constant threat of death. This mode is so far the saving grace of the cartridge, and I really like the clever way that it pushed both games together. But my frustration was soon back with Game Mode 6, as I was killed over and over by a constant onslaught of bats, eyeballs, and ghosts. No safe zones, no mercies, and no redemption. It seemed to be the same environment from Game Mode 5, but you start in the forest this time. So far, only one of the 6 game modes of this trilogy is really worth playing in my opinion, which is a shame. I didn't go into this game wanting to dislike it. It certainly wasn't my goal. Fens the Spook gifted this to me, and I wanted to give the first donation to the channel all kinds of praise. But I have to be honest in my experience, and so far, it's not a fun one. It was an experience of frustration and unfair difficulty, but we have one game left to go. A game that appears to change things in a very drastic way. So let's see if this trilogy can actually find some redemption. Real quick though, if you decide to take on Haunted Adventure Trilogy, then you absolutely must read and use the manual. You will be absolutely lost in most of the games without it. Not only is the story kind of fun and inventive, but this manual is extremely useful. Even if you consider yourself an adventure all-star, I highly recommend you use this thing. Okay, I just wanted to shoehorn that in somewhere. Anyway, on to Haunted Adventure 3, Witch's Flight. And if you've been following the manual, like I just suggested, then you read at the end of the last game that something swooshed over your head. And it appears to be a witch, who drinks something funky at a bar and feels like she's flying. I wish I was joking, but no. Somebody spiked this woman's drink, and after feeling funny, she turns into a witch. Now she parties with those evil enemies that tortured me during the other 2 games. Each year she returns for a monster mash with the Haunted House cast, but this time a Grim Reaper named Karen has summoned 3 Hellspawn and made your friends go crazy. On top of that, he cracked that old magical urn into 3 pieces once again, and if you can't put it together before a certain time, he'll rule all the world. So you start as a human, and you can watch the story progress, which is a cool Easter egg, but outside of that, in the very end of the game, well, there's no real purpose for the human form. Still, flying as a witch is fun anyway, and that's what you want to be doing. You can fly around aimlessly, but it's actually fun to try and save your friends and put the urn together. So I recommend doing that. If you get touched by the winged snake, the swarm, or the cacodemon, then you lose the ability to fly and carry items. You need to locate and kiss your black kitty cat to get these powers back. Depending what position your difficulty switches are in, makes this task easier or harder, which I like. The sound effects are less abrasive too, and I could actually listen to them while I play. They still aren't really good, but definitely much improved. Finding your friends and dumping them off into the graveyard is easy enough, but putting the urn together gives me the most trouble. That thieving bat is back once again, stealing pieces and moving them all around. Plus you have 2 portals, the grave, and the phone booth that all look like they might be where you drop the pieces off at. But it's actually a nondescript door that is the front door to the haunted house. Who would have guessed? Once you get all your friends back and the urn into the case, you have to change back to your human form one last time and return the urn for the ending. I really like Haunted Adventure 3. It gave me a solid challenge the first time through, and I actually had fun trying to beat my time and increase the difficulty for myself. It didn't feel impossible and frustrating like the last 2 games. It truly was a breath of fresh air on this cartridge, and besides Game 2, Mode 5, I'll be returning almost exclusively for this game in the future. But we need to take this package as a whole into the Atari Network pros and cons section and see if the cartridge can squeak out a recommendation. For the pros, I do think there are some good ideas and game modes on the cart. Mashing Adventure and Haunted House together is actually a good idea, and the Superman hack works better than I would have thought. It was cool seeing the second game be a cohesive world in each of its difficulty settings. Continuing the story and challenge in that way was fun. I do like some of the sprites, and the enemies look pretty frightening when they attack. But we're already onto the cons, and these can be a bit spooky. First off, the difficulty is ridiculous. It sucked all the fun out of most of the game modes. There was also a few too many scenarios where I lost items into the walls and couldn't get them back. The sound is pretty bad throughout and really got on my nerves. Enemies spawn camped me and camped necessary items, making me just shut the game off and go find something else to do, and leaving a game in anger is never a good sign. Also, reading this thick manual is a must, and while I enjoy the manual, I never like games that make you read them. And even though there are 3 games and 7 total modes, well, 5 of them are bad. Only 2 modes was worthwhile to me, and that's a bad average. So with all that said, it's my horrifying duty to give Haunted Adventure Trilogy on the 2600 2 CX40 joysticks out of 5. I see a lot of 5 out of 5 ratings on atariage, and I have a feeling that these are people who love adventure and wanted a serious challenge. I think most Atari fans and video game fans in general will find this package too frustrating and difficult to be fun, but I am thankful to have given it a try, and I want to thank Fens the Spook for sending it over to me. It was really nice and appreciated, but unfortunately, it didn't change my views on graphics hacks to this point. Maybe another game out there can. But now I want to hear from all of you. Have you tried Haunted Adventure Trilogy? Do you think it's good? Or if you haven't played it, does it look good to you? Why or why not? And do you agree with my view on graphics hacks? That they are usually less enjoyable than other forms of homebrew? Let me know your take on this and much more in the comments down below. And please, like the video and subscribe if you haven't. We put out 2 videos a week, so hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload. And thank you to the following classy Atarians who support the Atari Network on Patreon. Without their support, the channel wouldn't have been able to cover this game or many others. So thank you to Jeremiah Thomas, Mr. Shua TV, Fens the Spook, who donated this game, Socrates63, Ball Gobbler, Jolt7800, Head Trauma Bob, OG Hugo, and my own Celestial. You guys rock. And with all that said, it's time I head back to the coffin before the sunrise vanquishes me. I'm a vampire known as the 7800 Pro Gamer here at the crypt called the Atari Network, and I'd like to thank you all for braving Haunted Adventure Trilogy with me. And remember to stay classy, Atarians.